Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back with another episode, and I'm absolutely thrilled today to have with me Layng Guerriero. Layng, first of all, welcome, and thank you so much for taking the time to visit with me today.
Thank you for having me.
Layng, we're going to talk about a wide variety of subjects, but the first subject is near and dear to both of our hearts, which is when did you get to Kerrville or the Hill Country?
We're from Houston, and Karen and my wife and I, Karen, you might know her from Kerrville Pets Alive, but we left about 11 years ago, and it was when we had two kids of our three kids were changing schools. And since they were starting new schools, we thought to ourselves, why wait for them to graduate? Let's just make a move. And that's what we did. And we came up here not really knowing where we are going to live. We just knew this is where we wanted to be. And I used to work in the corporate world, and I had to figure out what I was going to do. I'd worked at Service Corporation for about 7 or 8 years, and then just kind of made my living consulting for them for a while, and then grew that business into more of a larger business.
Is it statewide?
It's nationwide.
Nationwide. Just another successful businessman running a nationwide business out of Kerrville. I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do the same. We met actually at the Rotary Club of Kerrville. Could you say a few words about your Rotary experience?
I love Rotary. Rotary is a group of like-minded individuals. Everybody has a servant's heart. There's always something to do. You can pick and choose where you want to volunteer. But it's also important because if you want to be involved in the community, we have everybody represented there, from the city council to mayor to police chief. Any kind of person you can think of that's involved in the city is in Rotary. And it's good to have those conversations. Every Wednesday we have a lunch. We listen to a wonderful speaker. And then if you want to talk to somebody that's working with you on a project, or you can usually see them there and get some business done. So
It's certainly been a great experience for me. And I tell friends of mine, I'm like, where else can you go? You sit down next to the mayor and have a deep dive conversation in commercial real estate values in your hometown. It's just
absolutely.
great, and everything in between. But we're here to talk about, I don't want to call it a passion project, but it's a huge project for Kerrville that you are a part of, and it's currently named the Guadalupe River Center. Could you tell us what that project is?
So the Guadalupe River Center was born out of the 2050 meetings that they had years ago. And a couple of gentlemen, Charlie McCormick, John Anderson, and I think Charlie McElvain, were sitting at a table, and they were talking about the future of Kerrville and resources that we had. And John Anderson was looking at that lake at Nimitz Lake, which is about a 100-acre lake that we have pretty much in the middle of town. And he said, I think we could probably use that to sail. And that's how the conversation sort of started. And then, of course, Dr. McCormick with Shrine University, there's college activities they can have out there. Charlie McElvain, being unbelievably experienced in community development, had his other opinions of different things that this community could do out there. And John just wanted to sail out there. So that's where it started. And then COVID hit, and it kind of got all tabled. And then after COVID, John talked to the city manager and EA Hoppy at the time, and convened a meeting of people who were interested in doing something with the lake. And then EA got in there. We had a meeting at the Community Foundation's boardroom. There were probably about 10 or 11 of us. And John gave his vision of the lake, and he said, let's do something here. And the city had just recently received a parcel of land on the south side of the lake, which is now called Granger McDonald Park. It's just raw land, but there's actually an additional 1,850 feet of river frontage, and that's available. And John said, let's build a river center out there. And he said, let's not focus just on a building or one particular part of the lake. Let's look at the lake holistically as an entire area, kind of like a lake district. We have a downtown district, and now this is sort of a lake district. So he looked at the whole thing like that and saw it as a huge resource for our community. And the city owns the lake. Why not do it? And when I came involved, John had heard that I was a sailor and I like to sail. And I don't know, there's not too many sailors in Kerrville, but we reached out, we talked, and he got me involved with it. And I saw the vision, and I said, I'll try to help you. I don't know what I can do. And off we went. And he assembled a board. We've got Brent Ringo from KISD. We've got Dr. McElvain or Dr. McCormick, Charlie McElvain, Schreiner, Chamber of Commerce. We've got Kristen Hedger from Killdeer, Greg Appel from Happy State Bank, the bankers, lawyers, all these different people. But he assembled really a dream team board and said, let's do it. And that's how we got to where we are today. It's really you got to have the right people. You can have a great idea, but you got to have that right group of people or it won't get done.
One of the things that has struck me about Kerrville is really the public-private partnership. It's many cases, like yourself, business leaders. In many cases, it's citizens with a passion, but they'll come up with an idea. They'll present that to the government, whether it be the city or some other department, and the idea can move forward. Is that consistent with what you guys are doing around Guadalupe River Center?
Absolutely. And it ties a little bit back to Rotary. Just went to the Rotary training camp or whatever in San Antonio for the leadership conference. And it's really about just people getting together and having a focus on doing something. And so a lot of these things that come together, it just takes patience and persistence. That's probably the two things that I would say you have to do if you're going to build a park or build a trail. I know we just extended the river trail so that the VA group can cross over and get to the park. They're using it. Every day I drive by, I see wheelchairs and veterans go up and down that trail that was just put in there. And it just took a couple people. I think it was Tom Mosier and there's another guy, but it was just, let's do it. And they all got together and got it done.
So you mentioned the sailing, but the River Center is going to have a wide variety of uses for our citizens and different activities for people. Could you maybe go through some of those for me?
Yeah. So the big issue with the lake, the Nimitz Lake, is that there's no access. To give you an idea of access is you could look at Shriner Park where they have the lake down there and you cross by the VA. And on any given summer day on the weekend, you'll see hundreds of people out there. The reason is they have access. There's about 500 feet of river access where you can just get into the water. So we don't have that on them. It's like we have a boat ramp, but that's not access. It's a boat ramp. And what'll be different about this is that we don't even call it a boat ramp. We call it a river access ramp because it gently slopes. It's extremely wide. It's probably 50, 60 feet wide. You can take a wheelchair and go into the water and get on your kayak if you wanted to. It's that kind of grade. But it also is wide because a lot of regattas can happen on that lake for little sailboats or paddle boards or kayaks or whatever we have. I was contacted the other day by a guy who does Heroes on the Water. They have fishing tournaments for handicapped veterans. They get in the kayaks and they go out and have a fishing tournament. And they need special ramps like that, but they also need the handicap piers. It's another piece of it that we're putting in which will be connected to a boardwalk. There's about 200 feet of boardwalk and that boardwalk gives people access right to the lake. So once we have all that in place, then we'll have a better venue for the triathlon, which is 2,000 athletes that come here every year. They'll be able to have ease in getting in and out of the water. They won't be stomping through the mud. They'll have an actual way to get in and out. We could have sailboat tournament or sailboat regattas, sprint kayak racing. We can't have the full sculling because our lake is actually about a mile long, which is about as long as you need for a full, those big long boats. So it's long enough to have a race, but they can't stop. And then, but you can't have sprint kayak, sprint paddleboard, sailing. And then these other things called corkles, which somebody from one of the camps turned me on to. These are like little donuts that the kids have paddles and they get in. It's just for 5-year-olds or just young kids. And they get in there and they play bumper boats with them. So stuff from the camps, they've given us some ideas for that too.
But in addition to sailboats and other craft, the center is going to have a wide variety of other uses. So could you talk about the partnership with the UGRA
Yep.
and educational component of this project?
Yep. The UGRA has been guiding us ever since pretty much the very beginning. I'm from Houston, so I know a lot about hurricanes. I don't know a lot about river or watershed stewardship and things like that. And so I've had to learn that as a newcomer here. But Tara Bushnell over there, she does an amazing job. She has taught us, look, we want to work with you to build the center, but we also want to make sure that you're doing everything the way we'd want it done, not because they're trying to tell us this is how you do it. They want to use it as an example. So for other businesses that want to build along the river, they want to show things like permeable pavement, they're porous concrete, things like that, where the rainwater doesn't slide down to the river and carry the dirt and the oils and things like that. It all has to be filtrated. They want to also show water reclamation. So what we have in our design, the rainwater will hit the roof and then it goes into a tank. We use that to irrigate. They want to show the riparian buffer. They don't want to see things like St. Augustine grass along the river. There's a reason for that. It's not that it doesn't look pretty. It's just, it's not healthy for the river. So they're all about the river's health. And to that extent, this fall, we're going to be purchasing our property, hopefully in early September, and it's all under contract, but they're also purchasing 8 acres of land along the river there in addition to what we're purchasing. So altogether, there'll be a river park, and the Granger McDonald Park and the River Center will all be about 11 acres complex, basically, on the river.
Could you say a few words about the approval process that you went through, not only with the city of Kerrville, but also with the EIC, and how they all relate together for a major project such as this?
So there's 3 partners. There's the city of Kerrville, which manages the Granger McDonald Park. That's where the river access will be, the boardwalk, the parking. And then the land along the river, upriver from there, about 8 acres, will be the Upper Guadalupe River Authority. They'll own that land and they'll use that to preserve the river, obviously. But they also have other programs related to Eduscape. And Eduscape is just teaching people how to maintain the river's edge, teaching them best practices for filtration and things like that. And then our property is just above Granger McDonald Park. It actually sits just above it, just outside the floodplain. And that property sits on top of there. Our building will be there. And then, so the 3 of us will just work together to create that complex.
And in terms of, if you said it, the Economic Improvement Council, how does it sort of into the overall structure, or at least some of the approvals you had to get?
So number one, there's not a ad valorem tax dollar. This is all funded through sales tax for the city to Granger McDonald Park. It's their park. It's the citizens' park. That'll be funded through the EIC. They recently passed a revenue bond that is paid for through sales tax. And then our project, which sits above it, is funded by us privately, private donations. And then the UGRA, they're funding their own project with their own tax dollars.
Could you talk a little bit about the fundraising efforts your organization is engaged in, and maybe where, if someone wanted to find out more information or get involved, where they could go?
Absolutely. We have 2 campaigns. One campaign is to purchase the land. We're about 65% of the way there on that. That's about $395,000. And then we have the facility campaign, which is the building of the building. And we've already taken naming donations for that as well. One of our partners is HEB Corporate. So they've joined in on that. And then for the naming, we have, I'm not sure I can say their names publicly, but most everybody you can think of in town, those names.
Is there a website or other informational site that someone could go to?
Yeah, the genesis of the land campaign was to create a sign so that people can put their name on the sign, a permanent generational kind of thing. It's how you go to www.guadaluperivercenter.org and you can see the land campaign there and you can donate online. We looked at different projects around town, like Arcadia, like for instance, even the new Amanda and David Williams Surgical Center. You always see these signs of these hundreds of names of people who donated. Now, Arcadia, I don't know what their amount was that they requested, but I know there's at least 200 names on the surgical center. And I know there's at least 100 names on the Arcadia. And so what we did is we said, let's just separate the land and make that its own campaign. And for as little as $2,500, you can have your name on that sign. And the sign sits just above where you go into the park, and it tells the visitors the depths of the areas around the lake and the different trails around the lake. So it's sort of informational. It's kind of a map. But below that, it says this land was generously donated by our community. And then all the names of everybody who gave money will go in there. And that's been pretty well received.
Why do you think it's important to have this type of facility? Someone said, why are we spending this money, or why is this money being spent? Why is it important to have something like this here?
If anyone has kids, and I'd say teenagers, they know there's not a lot of places for them to go. I'll start with that, because when my kids were here, They all graduated from Tybee, and most of the time they'd go to maybe Pine and Plow, but I mean, sometimes they go to Culver's. They don't have a place. They used to have a bowling alley. They don't have that anymore. So that's for one. The other part is it's an educational tool. We want to use the facility to teach vocational certifications for things like outdoor type careers. If you want to be a hunting and fishing guide, you got to get your captain's license. If you want to learn more about Parks and Rec and get certifications for that, you could do it there. Water treatment plants, things like that. Those are vocations that require certifications that you don't have to go to college. You can get your certification and have a pretty good paying job. And then, of course, there's watershed stewardship and conservation. We're always complaining about the lack of water here. Half the equation is teaching people how to conserve. And so we want to join the UGRA and provide those classes. We're not competing with the River Center or the Riverside Nature Center in that we're really focused on anything that's complementary to what they're doing.
Layng, unfortunately, we are near the end of our time for this episode, but I wanted to thank you for taking the time to visit with me, and I look forward to continuing this conversation.
Excellent. I look forward to coming back if you need me.
All right.
All right.